Hello, I'm Andrew G. Marshall of Marshall Method Therapy, and I'm here with Beth, one of my team members, to discuss the issue of work, stress, and the impact on relationships. So why are you interested in our emotional relationship with work?
Well, I think it's such an important subject for so many of the clients that I see. We spend a disproportionate amount of our time at work, if you think about it, and work fulfills many functions for us all, apart from the obvious financial function. Work gives our lives purpose and meaning, and as a therapist, that's essentially what I'm interested in.
So what sort of problems do you actually see coming into your therapy room?
A variety, actually. There are people who are finding work is actually one of the causes of distress in their life. You mentioned stress before. People who are distressed by perhaps their partners, the amount of time their partner is spending at work or the impact that work is having on their partner. People who want to change careers, who feel that work is no longer fulfilling, and people who would love to be in work, frankly, and are struggling to do that. So a pretty broad spectrum.
But it's sort of a source of self-esteem, and that can be a positive and a negative. Tell me about that.
Exactly right. So on the positive side, work gives us structure, it gives us purpose, it can be incredibly fulfilling. On the negative side, and I think this is a little bit less obvious to most people, on the negative side, I think work can actually be an avoidance of confronting some of the bigger challenges that we have as a human being, what it is we want from life, the quality of our relationships. I do think people can use work as a little bit of an excuse for not confronting some of the changes they really want to make.
So how can therapy help with all of this?
Well, therapy provides that unique safe space, that place where people can start to slow down their thinking. When we're caught up in a busy working environment, our brains are working very quickly, there's constant pressures. What we rarely have the time to do is to stop, to slow down and reflect, and to really speak sometimes the unspeakable, but in a safe environment. And that for me is the start of what allows change to happen, allows people to get more in touch with themselves and make the changes that they want for themselves.
And I think to listen to the messages they were probably given when they were young about work as well, because sometimes these messages are so strong, nobody actually even said them. What sort of messages do you find people have been given about work?
I think this starts to tap into a lot of the beliefs that we hold about ourselves, about how we should be. As you say, that we'll have sort of swallowed whole from parents and other caregivers and teachers, and very often that in order to be a successful person, that's often defined in terms of quite concrete things like salary or profession or status. And I think these messages get swallowed whole by children, and it's often only in later life when we get a sense that actually something's not quite right in our lives that we start to question actually are those what's important to us.
So that can be a really positive kind of thing.
Yeah.
So let's go on to the less positive thing, which is stress.
Yeah.
So tell me about stress.
Well, the way that I see stress in and of itself is it not being a bad thing. I think there are optimum levels of stress, and people have different capacities for pressure from work and from any source actually. But what is a negative thing is when the amount of pressure that's coming in from the environment and work in this case outweighs our capacity to handle it. And we start to see people sliding down a curve from, instead of being fulfilled and buzzing and sort of on top of their game, the demands start to weigh them down. They start to feel they have no choice, so they, if you like, discount the choice that they have in making changes. They start to work harder, longer, faster to keep up with the pressure. And in doing that, what happens is that they give up the things, the activities that really nurture and support them. And I'm thinking there of hobbies, time to be on their own, but also really importantly time to be with loved ones, family, children. All those things tend to sustain us And when we're under pressure, they're the first things we give up.
Which is tragic, really, because
Yeah,
I think one of the hardest things to say to your partner, and certainly this is my experience with clients, is to actually be able to say something like, I'm really concerned about the impact of your job on our relationship, is almost a taboo subject. Why do you think that is?
I think a couple of things come to mind there, Andrew. So the first thing is that for people who have fulfilling careers and roles, working lives, that is one very precious place where you can be an individual within a relationship. And I think we can guard, and quite rightly sort of guard, our individuality within the relationship. So it can feel a little bit intrusive if your partner is starting to make inquiries and challenge the validity of your working life. And yet, at the same time, I think I see people, probably unconsciously, but sometimes deliberately, using work as an avoidance mechanism, a way of avoiding intimacy with their partner, with their family, possibly because the idea of confronting some of those difficulties is overwhelming, so it's easier to spend more time at work.
And work's easy because there are clearly defined rules and ways of doing things, and actually at home it's all far more complicated, isn't it?
I think that's it. I think work creates some certainty, something concrete, whereas relationships are messy and uncertain, and again that's where the therapy comes in, because you can confront some of that mess, but in a safe, supporting place.
And the other big issue that I certainly see a lot of, and I expect you do too, can be sort of jealousy and suspicion about work colleagues.
Yes, I think that goes back to the work being quite an individual place where somebody can, if you like, escape from the relationship. And I think when that's happening, understandably for the other partner, there's often suspicion, especially if someone's suddenly spending more time at work, and people will have do form very close relationships at work, and this can create jealousy for the other party, who may feel that someone's talking to colleagues about the kind of things they're longing for them to bring home and talk about to them. So I think it's a very natural thing that people do get some mistrust and suspicion.
And that subject of boundaries is certainly something that we talk about, and there's more information at my website, which is www.andrewgmarshall.com.